watching the Forefront Church video podcast. And wherever you're at viewing online, we just want to say thank you and welcome. And one of the ways that we can help connect with you is we want to hear from you and where you're at and how we can help. And so head over to forefrontchurch.info after the message and click the Connect tab. It's a great way for us to help you along your spiritual journey as you connect with God and learn about Jesus. And so sit back, relax. We hope that you're challenged and encouraged from today's message. If you've been around kids for any length of time, one of the things that you'll notice pretty quickly is that their minds are in a completely different place. Like they think things and say things and do things that you just go, what is happening inside of your head? Like, why is that even a thing? Being around kids during student ministry days that I was a part of for about 10 years, and they said some interesting things even in middle school. But I wrote down a few of them that really struck me as interesting. I was dropping off our daughter Roxy when she was in preschool back in the day, and just dropping them off, and there were a bunch of kids in the classroom, and you drop them off, you give your kid a kiss, and you send them on their way. This other kid comes running up, and she said, a boy says, "Hey," and I'm like, pretty like, just ready to almost like pounce, like he was just like, and I'm like, all right, and he's like, "Hey," and I'm like, "Hey," and he's like, "My dad told me that beards are for jail people." And so I'm pretty quick on my feet, and I just kind of lean in, and I go, "Maybe they are." Kid's face is like, freak out, and he goes running off. Our youngest, my girls keep asking about having a pet. And for all you guys who have pets, I'm not, because people are like, Jason's anti-animals. I'm not anti-animals. I'm just about animals for other people and not for us. And part of the reason is I'm extremely allergic. I'm allergic to all kinds of things, and our daughters constantly ask, "Can we get a pet? Can we get a pet? Can we get a pet?" And hey, this. And I always give them something that just like, it's never going to happen. And so I'm just like, if we won the lottery and we had whatever, and then we had all this stuff, and we could have it, and like, it's that whole Dumb and Dumber thing. So you're saying there's a chance. And so I was explaining to our youngest, like, why we're not getting them. I'm very allergic. I cannot be around it. And she responded, and I had to write it down, because I said, there's no way I can be around it because I am allergic. And she says, well, when you die, can we get a pet? If you ever need a self-esteem booster, you should hang out with a child, because they'll put you right in your place. I saw somebody had posted a meme. They're like, if you think that you're ugly or whatever, it's probably not true. If your friends say something about being ugly, it's not true. But if a kid tells you you're ugly, you ugly. And so it's crazy. My daughters at the breakfast table, this is a while ago, our two oldest, they were kind of getting into it. And we always tell our girls, need to be honorable. We need to, as we talk about in our children's system, make the wise choice, need to be kind to other people. And Chloe comes walking in, our oldest, and her hair looks like something attacked it. It's bad. And Roxy, our youngest, she has no poker face. And so she sees it, and she's like, but she goes, but then she immediately says, Chloe, your hair looks so good today. And I'm like, and I'm making breakfast, and I hear what's transpired, and I'm like, what's going on? And so Roxy comes running over to me. She says, Daddy, isn't that what we're supposed to do, right? Like, even though we say something, but it's not true, that's called being polite. And I'm like, we're going to have to relearn this lesson a little bit here. But in her mind, like, it just made total sense. There was one time in particular with my brother and I, though, that probably takes the cake for things that go through your mind and things you say. And we were traveling across country. It was like that trip. Like if you ever have that opportunity to, and our family did it one time, it was amazing. I still remember that trip to this day. And we had just in the hotel that we had stayed at as we're traveling across, watched the movie Funny Farm with Chevy Chase. How many of you guys ever seen that movie? It's funny. It's a good, hence Funny Farm. And so we watched the movie, and one of the places they go, he goes into this like little pub restaurant area, and they have this contest for see who can eat the most, and they have the thing up there, and it's lamb fries. And I shouldn't have to explain what lamb fries are. If you don't know, don't Google it, because that's a bad idea. But lamb fries are from this region here. And so, he beats the record, and then he finds out what lamb fries are. Well, we watched the movie, and my little brother asked my dad, what's that about? And so my dad, in a very like PC way, explains to 10-year-old child what this really is. And so he's like, oh, that's weird. Why would anybody want to eat that? And he's like, yeah, whatever. So then we travel the next day, and we pull in, and we meet some relatives that my mom, me, my brother, my sister have never met. We're traveling across, and these ladies that are in this house range from like 62 to in their 80s. And so we're meeting them and shaking hands, introductions, all that stuff. And my brother, out of nowhere, asks, using the medical term, Daddy, what are, out in front of all of these three women, and they are like, what are you teaching these children? We've never met them before. I'm dying laughing because I know what's happening in all this. My dad, who does not get mortified easily, turns 100 shades of red. And he's like, we'll talk about that later, son. Go ahead and move over here. And he's like, Bud, you told me I'm supposed to ask. And it's one of those things where kids just think things and they just say them. I mean, this happens all the time. I hear about it in children's ministry where a kid will come back there, they'll go through a lesson, like, you won't believe what this kid said. And so you never know what your kids will say when you send them to school, and then you get the note home, Johnny said this and whatever. Or that's like the picture that circulates all the time where it's around the snowy time where the kid draws a snow shovel and talks about how mom clears the driveway, but it looks like mom's pole dancing in the picture. And the teacher's like, can you explain this and give some clarity? She's like, oh my goodness. Because kids do, the way they interpret things and the way they see things, their thoughts are everywhere. And most of the time, quite honestly, it's pretty innocent. It's one of those things that you see those things that they're thinking, that they're saying, and it just it's okay. It's not a big deal. But when it comes to us, things get a little heavier. I've been text messaging back and forth with a handful of guys who have dealt with addiction on the LGBTQ spectrum, a couple of guys who have attempted suicide. And as I've been messaging with them, there's a common theme that's starting to happen. These guys ranging in ages from early 20s to mid-50s. I don't know what to do when these thoughts pop up that weigh on me so heavily. And I think that can be said for most of us. You know, those moments where something gets kind of stuck in your head. And I'm not talking about when you go and listen to a song and it's in your head for the rest of the day, because that's an easy thing that can happen. I'm talking about those thoughts that overwhelm you and you just go, I can't sleep at night. I'm having a hard time functioning in my day-to-day movement at my job. My kids want to talk to me, or my spouse wants to talk to me, or my boyfriend or my girlfriend or my friends, as they begin talking to me, I almost don't hear what they say because I'm so overwhelmed by these thoughts. And I don't know how to turn them off. And then we get into the mode where we almost feel ashamed and beat ourselves up that these thoughts pop into our head in the first place. That these things that we're processing, these things that we're moving in, and they begin to overload us. And it's why we started this series last week to look at these different facets of life that can become so overloaded and so overwhelming that we just feel like we're going to buckle under the pressure. And sometimes we can't even get outside of our own head because it feels like it's on lockdown, and we just shame ourselves for not being able to function. I know people who go, Jason, I haven't gotten up and gone to my job in a couple of days because it's been so heavy on me. I've had to call in, quote unquote, sick. And I'm like, well, right now you are sick. It's not the go to the doctor and get medicine kind of sick, but it is a weighty difficulty that You have some stuff going on that we need to look at and address. But I don't want you to beat yourself up. And they go, man, that's really hard. And more, we're seeing this climate of mental health kind of pop up. And so much of this dialogue and discussion doesn't even have to sit in anxiety, doesn't have to sit in depression. You know, those things that we go, they're faux pas, and they're kind of rising to the surface, and we're talking about them more. Sometimes it's just we can't get outside of this cycle of thinking, and it becomes so overloaded, and we shame ourselves and are down on ourselves. And I was talking with one of the guys this past week, and I shared with him, there's this book by Brene Brown. She's fantastic. If you get offended by curse words, you should not read her books, though, because she speaks plainly. But I think sometimes in the area of what she talks about, she's just saying what's true. And she shares this. So sometimes when we are beating ourselves up, we need to stop and say to that harassing voice inside, man, I'm doing the very best I can right now. And I think for many people that I speak to, what keeps popping up is, well, I'm just not good enough. I just can't overcome this. Thoughts about their identity when it comes to their physique, their weight, their working out, their habits that they have. When they get inside their own head when it comes to about ego and pride and anger and frustration. Can't tell you the number of men that I've spoken to who go, man, I don't want to be angry. But I get inside my head and I think these thoughts, and then it just kind of it comes out because I don't talk a lot. But when I do talk, it's because I'm frustrated. I go, man, we need to talk about what it means in a godly way to not be overloaded and talk about our thoughts. I was counseling with a lady the other day, and she's walking through separation. And she's asking these questions. She said, I feel like when I said my I do's and now I'm in this spot, I just have a constant voice every day telling me I'm a failure. And I don't know what to do with that because I've tried everything I can, but it's a two-way street, and I don't know how to make the other person want that. So I just feel like I failed. And we start talking about some of this. And I wonder if and I don't mean to lay something so heavy on you first thing in the morning, but maybe we need to talk about it enough to say there's some things that are really hard. That if we were to get up and stand, which we're not going to do, if we were to get up and everyone starts sharing their story of the things that are going on back behind the eyeballs of what we're thinking as we walk in. And it isn't simply, I can't wait to sing my favorite song today. Sometimes it's, I don't feel like I'm worth it. I don't even feel like being here. I'm not quite sure why I'm doing what I'm doing. But I believe that God has a better way for us. And we're going to be looking at a few different verses today. So if you have a Bible, you can kind of flip open. We'll be in Colossians and then a few other passages. And so I'd say the best thing you do is go to forefrontchurch.info. We talk about this every week. You can go and swipe over to our notes section and follow along. And if you don't have a Bible, we open up the Bible every single week. I'd love for you to stop by there and grab a Bible today. There's no catch. You don't have to fill anything out. It's absolutely free. But how do we address this? Because that's kind of the big question, right? Like we come to God, we come to church, we come to faith, and our hope is that something would change, that something would get better, that something would just move in our hearts and in our life. We go, man, I am leaving different. Well, part of that is hearing that. Part of that is hearing what could change. Another piece of that is actually taking action. One of the core values that we have here is that application is everything. I can hand you all the workout gear and trainer and everything possible, but you will only make a change if you actually decide to, what? Do it, to take action. And so as we see these pieces, if you get inside your own head so much and get in this cycle, and it happens with a lot of us where we get overloaded, and it starts in the mind. In some of the decisions that we make. The writer in Colossians begins to share it this way as an encouragement. It says, for this reason, since the day we heard about you, we have not stopped praying for you. We continually ask God to fill you with knowledge of his will. This movement and talking about the mind, filling his knowledge through all the wisdom and understanding that the Spirit gives. If you're a believer, God has put in you the indwelling Holy Spirit. If you are a follower of Jesus, You've surrendered your life to him, that moves in you and helps guide you. And don't think about it like Jiminy Cricket, in this kind of movement, that the Spirit conditions you and I to move differently. The writer continues on, so that you may live a life worthy of the Lord and please him in every way, bearing fruit in every good work, growing in the knowledge of God. And so the writer's sharing that as we move in this, we change our mind. And there's other passages that address this. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not on your own what? Understanding. How easy for us to walk into a situation and believe something because of past experiences. No, I'm not saying to negate the fact that you've walked through something before, but to be able to say, you know what, this something could be different. There's people that are going to walk in this week and they're going to cast a vote, and I'm not even here to talk about what you do. But for many people, they go, it's just going to be the same old thing. You walk into your marriage, you walk into your relationship and go, well, nothing's going to change because it's always going to be the same way. I wonder if instead of trusting our own understanding, that we would trust in God and go, God, I want to move in the way that you've told me to move and act in the way that you've told me to act based on my thoughts first, moving through that. It says, set your minds on things above and not on earthly things. Those who live according to the flesh have their minds set on what the flesh desires, basically selfishness, doing what we want to do, looking out for number one. But those who live in accordance with the Spirit have their minds set on what the Spirit desires. The mind governed by the flesh is death. And we talk about this a lot, that you have, that we talked about a couple weeks back, the wide road and the narrow road. That we could choose things and it's going to be selfish, it's going to be our way, and it will feel good in the moment, but it ultimately leads to destruction. Because when we operate on all about us, it doesn't end well, but when we follow God and his precepts, it moves differently. And the mind governed by the Spirit is life and peace. See, this overloaded idea is one of these things that honestly we have to condition ourselves to think differently. But the pushback, most of the time when I talk with people, say, I'm not ready for that. I don't really want to do that. And that's an easy cop-out. That's an easy thing like, hey, God calls us to pray. I'm just not sure about that. God calls us to serve other people. I am definitely not ready for that. Like, God calls us to move in ways that are different than the way that we've always done them. And that's an easy cop-out, but it's also one of those things, and I understand why people say that, but I think it's because we just don't want to embrace and move in what God calls us to when it comes to change. And I would ask the question, what are you focusing on? And to kind of illustrate this, get this baseball bat here. And if you want to balance a baseball bat, there's one of two ways that you can try to attempt to do this. You can attempt to look at the base and go, all right, I'm going to balance that. But you can very quickly understand that when you balance a bat on your hand, and you look at the base, that you will always find it beginning to fall pretty quickly, actually. That each time that you do it, you can follow it along, but over time, and you may get faster and faster, but when you focus on what's right in front of you, down below, the circumstances, the things that are happening, you're not able to balance it because it actually has nothing to do with balance. It has everything to do with focus. You see, there's a difference in mind when we look at the top. When we keep our focus upward, we're able to look at where it's going to go and we can correct down below, but we're not focused on what we're doing. We're focused on what is above. And there's a difference for you and I when we look at our thinking. If you look at the track record of what you have happening in your life and you watch situations that became completely overloaded in your mind, I can almost guarantee if we were to go back and track it back far enough, we would look at moments where you and I were focused on what was happening right there, and then it began to fall. We go, I don't understand why it fell. Because we didn't focus on things above. And if we want to get to a place where we can go and move in this, and we can do this, our arm is going to, if we focus up top, your arm will get tired eventually. But you're going to and you're going to be able to keep it for some time, even if you are somebody who is not very good at all of these things. You would be able to stand here, and there's not a lot of movement. And sometimes that's the way it is with God. We think that, oh, there's not a lot going on, whatever. But when we focus on things above, there's a lot going on underneath the surface. And God moves in ways that we sometimes just don't understand. And if you don't get anything else, my prayer is that you get this. That overwhelming thoughts lead to alarming instability. That when your mind is overwhelmed, we talked about this in week 1, that having an overloaded lifestyle in all that you do, in your work, in your personal life. Dan next week is going to talk about the busyness of things, which I can guarantee you every single one of us at one point in time has dealt with, and probably there is a myriad of people right now at Forefront Church that are dealing with it. But when we think about our thoughts, when we get overwhelmed, it leads to all of those medical things that we talked about before, but also spiritual fatigue. I meet people all the time who tell me, well, I'm just really burnt out in what I'm doing for God. And I go, how's your prayer life? What are you thinking about during the day? They go, well, what does that have to do with anything? I've been in the nursery with babies. That's why I'm stressed out. I go, no. When you're on it Wednesday, what'd you read in the Bible? What did you focus your mind on? Because I find it very rare that someone that is connected and focusing on things above ever feels, quote unquote, burnt out on doing what God commanded them to do. Because you're focusing on the right things and you're processing through those and you're putting your mind at where it needs to be. I love the way that Heather read it last week during worship, but she wrote this, that we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. I love that word, demolish. I'm not much of a home guy, but I can tell you what, I've watched a few episodes of Fixer Upper. How many of you guys ever seen that show? I'm not like a super big Chip and Joe, like, yeah, whatever, but if I saw them, I'd want to hang out. They seem fun. But one of the things that they start after they find the home that they pick through, and they bring people to a few different homes, they pick that house, and then they are ready for what? Demo day. Man, I would love to I don't have the money to do after demo day at our house, but I have the energy and frustration to practice demo day. I have ideas. But there's something about that word demolish. Like if you ever watch one of those episodes, even if you're not a big fan, watch one of the episodes on Demo Day, and sure enough, if you even watch a clip of or search on YouTube for Chip Gaines Demo Day, he throws himself through walls consistently. Like he'll hit it with the thing, but he'll eventually just go, you know what? Let's just go ahead and take the wall out. And he runs and throws himself. I'm like, bro, you've done that one too many times. You lost some brain cells. But there's something about taking it and going, it doesn't belong, so it has to what? Go. It has to go. Why is it that when it comes to the thoughts that we know shouldn't be there, we let them stay? I would even put it a different way. See, we don't choose what pops into our heads, but we do choose how long we have coffee with it. Where the thought comes in. And God has told us to take every thought captive. That we would demo it to the ground. That we would focus on things above. And then that thought pops in. We begin to feel overloaded. You say, here, we're going to pull up a chair. We're going to sit down and let's have some coffee with that. We're going to mill that over again and again and again. And we run through all the scenarios, all of which end badly for us. Why? Because that thought shouldn't be there in the first place. And yet we keep at it and keep at it and keep at it. And then we wonder by the end of the day, we reach even like 4 or 5 o'clock. It's not even nighttime. And we go, I feel so exhausted. I don't know why. Well, I know why. Because I've done it myself. Where something's popped up, where someone said something, and I believe the worst about that. And what instead of going to them and asking them about the conversation, or something with my spouse or something my kids said, or even with a coworker or a friend or whoever, and then I sit on it and marinate on it, and I put it in the fridge and I've just let it soak in, and then I said, invite it out, we're going to cook it, we're going to have coffee, and I'm just going to hang out with it. God goes, why would you do that? I've built you for better. I've instructed you on how to combat this. I've instructed you on how to demo it down, to completely get rid of it, to say, no, I'm not going to sit and have coffee with it. I'm going to get out the sledgehammer and we're going to go to work. And if I need to throw myself through the wall and knock it down, I will do whatever it takes because I know that that doesn't need to be there. I explained it to one of the guys this past week. I said, if somebody broke into your house, what would you do? He's like, I'd call 911 and I'd get out of there. And asked one of the other guys as they were talking about their thoughts. I said, if a burglar broke into your house, what would you do? And that guy, he's a little more aggressive. He said, well, I have something that can move faster than them, and I'm going to make sure they get out or they'll be out, like lights out. And I'm like, all right. I hear what you're laying down. I said, why would you do that? I asked both of these guys. So, because it doesn't belong there. Get out of my house. It was locked for a reason. It has my name on the mortgage, not yours. You're here to hurt me, to hurt others. Well, said, then why did you invite those thoughts in and let them stay when they don't need to be there either? It's like someone who has invaded your house, and you made a room for them. Could you imagine that? Someone breaks into your house tonight, and you catch them in the house. And you tell your kid, hey, I need you to come and sleep in our room. Why? Well, because this mean man, we're going to give him a room. People would commit you. And yet we do it with our thoughts every single day. And God has paved a better way, which is why, and I want to encourage you with this, the only way to experience victory is to declare war. Jason, I haven't experienced anything good because my thoughts keep running. Well, have you actually said that you're not going to come into this house, into this mind, into this heart without a fight? Don't you roll over. Don't you just mill it over day in and day out. You have a church family who loves you. You have a God who made you unique. You have people who are in your corner. I know it doesn't feel like it sometimes because those lies creep in and they tell you that everybody's against you. And you sit down and you go, yeah, I know. I don't know what to do. Nobody likes me. Things are hard. I'm all alone. You're right. That is a voice straight from hell. And I meet too many people who get inside their own head, and God has delivered you from that. He sent Jesus to the cross so that you could be free. And I want to tell you, if you've never been to church, you're not engaged in faith and all these things, and you've been battling things inside your own head, God has a better way for you. He has a better plan for you. But we sit in it. That overwhelming thoughts lead to alarming instability. You're watching it in your life, and you're asking why. And it's the difference between choosing calm over chaos. It's saying, do I want to sit in a place where I am constantly looking at that and everything keeps falling and I don't understand why, and I run to social media and tell people the sky is falling, that I'm trying, this is happening, and my finances are bad, and my head is hurting, and all this stuff, and my kids are off the rails, and I don't know what to do, and my job just isn't great, and my boss is mean, and it keeps falling, and your focus is down at the stuff, and God said, you have the chaos going on, I want you to focus on things above. Because it will calm your spirit. It'll calm your mind. It'll calm the circumstances around you. It might rile some other people up. You ever had a conversation with somebody that they're bonkers, like they're off, they're something's off, and then you talk calm? They go, "What's wrong with you?" Be like, "I'm just not going to let that bother me." Talking with a couple of the guys this past week. They're like, "Hey man, what do you do when you want to conquer those thoughts, and you want to make them submissive to God, that you're going to take every thought captive. I said, I stop. It's like if I'm getting ready to yell at my kid, I stop and I look at my Bible app. Well, why would you stop and do that? They need to be reprimanded. I was like, I don't want to do something that I'd regret, so I need to take that thought captive. Hey, man, what do you do when you're getting depressed or when you're getting anxious? Remember that I have a God who is championing for me, that I have an advocate, and so I sit and I pray. Pray, God, I need you to remind me about what is true, and I need you to kick that other guy to the curb because he's wandered in again and he doesn't belong, and I have a one-bedroom apartment up in here, and it has no space for that guy. It's just for you. He goes, all right, let's do work. You want to get stability back in your life? Choose the calm over the chaos. Declare war on those thoughts. Because I'm going to tell you what. You only have two paths. You can either choose to keep living in the mess and have coffee with it, and I can tell you that does not end well. We can talk offline about that. I've watched it in people's lives. I've watched it in my own. But the work that God does when we put our gaze on things above doesn't mean you ignore what's happening in your life. You don't for a minute go, Jason preached today on let go and let God. I did not say that. I hate when people say that mess because it takes away responsibility. Let go and let God means that there's nothing going on there. Holding on and trusting God means that you're a part of the process, that you put in work, that you say, I'm going to grab this, and God, you and I are going to go to town on all those thoughts, but God, I'm going to keep my gaze on you, but I'm going to be engaged. You see, this whole process here is staying connected. And when I watch people, and I'm going to talk small groups, they fall off, and they wonder why everything falls. I go, because you're not connected with God through other people and community like He designed you for. And I watch people where they're trying to put their gaze up, but then they stop engaging on Sunday mornings. They come one time a month, 2 times a month, and then, all of a sudden, they come one time every few months, and then it falls down. I wonder why. And I go, hey, because you're not focusing your gaze on things above, you're not being reminded. But you make sure you tune into that game every week because your team that you don't get paid for has to win or lose. And you'll sure show up to that job because you need to pay your bills, but you're mentally unstable, and your thoughts are all over the place because you need to focus on things above. I tell them, engagement matters. Connection matters. You can't drive your car anywhere if your battery's not connected. But yet we think we can drive in life and not have any connection with God. Choose calm over the chaos. I promise you, your life will change. But that choice is yours. Would you pray with me? Thanks for tuning in to the Forefront Church video podcast. Our hope and prayer is that this has left you encouraged and challenged you in your faith. And you might have some questions and some ways that you want to figure this out, and we want to help with that. Head over to forefrontchurch.info, and there's a couple different ways that you can connect. Click the Connect tab and let us know how we can be praying for you, or a staff member can be contacting you this week. Maybe you have just been encouraged by this and want to support the ministry here at Forefront Church. You can click the Giving tab, as well as other tabs that are in there to help you along in your journey with God. And so we're thankful for you. Thanks for tuning in, and we cannot wait to see you again here online on the video podcast. We love you, and we'll see you then.